Well, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. Well, today I wanted to take a few minutes to share with you my thoughts on a film that I've recently watched. It's a film that I picked up as part of the July Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale, the 50% off sale on all Criterion titles. And this is a film from Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky, and it came out in 1975 and is called Mirror. Now, this is a very fascinating, interesting, intriguing film. So I'll just say that right off the top. This is a film that is very different than any film that I've ever seen. And I would suspect that this is a film that would be very different for you as well. This film is really a cinematic experience that is unlike any other. And I think the word experience really is probably a good way to describe what watching this film is like. So Mirror is the 1975 autobiographical personal film from Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky. And this film stars Margarita Tarakova as the mother and ex-wife Natalia, Oleg Yankovsky as the father, Philippe Yankovsky as 5-year-old Alexei, the main character in this film, and Ignat Daniltsev as 12-year-old Alexei. So you've got different actors playing this character, Alexei or Alosha, at different ages of his life. And so essentially this film takes place in 1975 for part of the film. And the basic premise of Mirror is in 1975, a man in his 40s living in Russia is dying of an unknown malady. He recalls moments from his life, including his childhood before World War II, his experiences fighting in the war, and his post-war life, including marriage, fatherhood, and divorce. So I'll take a quick moment to read the description on the back of the Criterion package here. Mirror, a subtly ravishing passage through the halls of time and memory. Andrei Tarkovsky's sublime reflection on 20th century Russian history is as much a poem composed in images or a hypnagogic hallucination as it is a work of cinema. In a richly textured collage of varying film stocks and newsreel footage, the recollections of a dying poet flashed before our eyes, his dreams mingling with scenes of childhood, wartime, and marriage, all imbued with the mystical power of a trance. Largely dismissed by Soviet critics on its release because of its elusive narrative structure, I'll get to that in a moment, Mirror has since taken its place as one of the director's most renowned and influential works, a stunning personal statement from an artist transmitting his innermost thoughts and feelings directly from psyche to screen. As usual, Criterion's description of these films really nails so much of what this film is about. So I took some notes here of some things that I really wanted to point out about this film because there's so much depth to this film in terms of the dreams, the memories, the visions, the hallucinations that Tarkovsky is presenting to the viewer on the screen. So Mirror has some similarity to another film by another director from Federico Fellini called Amarcord, in that it has recollections of the director's childhood experiences. And that's pretty much where the similarities between Mirror and Amarcord end. It does include recollections of Tarkovsky's childhood. That's a big part of this film and a big part of the sort of loose narrative that you see unfolding on the screen. But that's where the similarity to Amarcord ends, because stylistically, in the way that this movie was shot and the way this movie is put together is very different from the Fellini film. But Fellini's film is sort of a reference to think about in terms of what other films have some similarity to Mirror. The other thing to think about is the non-linear structure of this film, and that was referred to in the back of the Criterion description. So Mirror is presented in a non-linear narrative structure, and it's an amalgamation of dreams, memories, reality, newsreel footage that jumps back and forth to different areas of time. And so it's covering different areas of time of this poet's life, this dying poet who's in 1975 He's going to different points of time in his life, going back to his childhood in the mid 1930s, all the way up to present day in the 1975. And it's covering three main periods. The period before World War II, so the period in the 1930s to the very early 1940s, his time serving in the war during World War II in the 1940s, and it also covers the post-war period where he experiences marriage, fatherhood, and divorce. And so this movie, in its non-linear structure, jumps back and forth to those different areas of time, and it does it sort of seamlessly and in a way that you can't really track and follow that well. And so that's one of the things I would definitely leave with you about this film, is this is not a film that I would recommend going into trying to piece together with some level of coherence what's going on in this movie. This is the type of movie you want to go in pretty blind and just have a general idea of what this film is. It's a man in 1975, he's in Russia, he's dying, and he's basically recalling the last 40 years of his life. And it's really a visual feast for the eyes in the way that Tarkovsky shot this movie. That is one of the best aspects of Mirror, is how absolutely beautiful this film is. This film, as I was thinking about this as I was watching the movie, that this is a film that's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. It is absolutely stunning how beautiful this movie is in terms of the presentation of the landscapes, the outside, the wooded area around the house that is the childhood home of Tarkovsky that he's dreaming about and that he's visioning in this movie. Just visions of people's faces, the mother, Natalia, his wife, and other characters in this film. This film is so beautifully shot, and the cinematography work that went into this film is just absolutely incredible. And another aspect of this film that I really liked is with the cinematography and the way it was shot, that I think the back of the Criterion package here describes different film stocks. And what they did is they shot this film in color, they shot it in black and white, they shot it in sepia. So you're seeing different tones throughout this movie as it covers different aspects of the life of this poet. And I'll just say this, that similar to what I said in my review of Irma Vep, which I recently put on the channel, another film that doesn't follow a typical narrative structure, this film here, Mirror, takes that to another level. That not only is it not following a typical narrative structure, but it's also jumping back and forth in time, and it's a lot more dreamy and hallucinatory in some ways. And so this film takes that to another level. So if you're the type of person that does not like non-linear types of narratives, and you need to have a conventional plot that has a beginning, a middle, and an end that you can follow all the way through, and that you can make sense of what's going on, and you can know what this character is and what that character is, what's the plot, what's the objective, what are we trying to do. If you like movies along those lines and you don't want a non-linear narrative, then I'll tell you up front that this is not the type of film for you. But if you are the type of person that can appreciate a film like this, that is more artistic in nature, that is just a beautiful presentation of visions, and that can present something on the screen cinematically in a way that is artistic and is almost like a painting or a poem, this is a fantastic, amazing film. So I think this is the type of film that is a film that really divides film fans, because some people will love this film, some people will hate this film, some people will look at this film and wonder what is going on and absolutely hate it. Other people, like myself, look at this film and I wonder what's going on, but I absolutely loved it because it is an incredibly beautiful film and is so poetic in the way that it presents what's going on the screen, and just experience watching this film and letting this film wash over me. And that's the way that I would recommend approaching a movie like this. This is the type of film that you want to watch and just let wash over you. And that's really the best way I can describe it. I really enjoyed the experience of watching this film, and I look forward to seeing this film again, because this is the type of film that you definitely want to experience multiple times in order to really appreciate the artistry that Tarkovsky is putting on the screen here, because this is a type of film that really transcends movies and cinema, and it really touches on other aspects of art such as painting, music, poetry. It just brings together all these different art forms together in the art form of cinema, which Tarkovsky noted is an art form that can do things that you really can't do in paintings or in poems or in music, in that you can have a cinematic experience, moving images, and bring all of these artistic forms together in one beautiful, artistic, dreamy vision that is Mirror. So I really enjoyed Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, and I really want to hear the comments from you about what you think about this film. What do you think about Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror? How does this film compare to other films from Tarkovsky, such as Solaris, such as Stalker, Ivan's Childhood, any other films from Andrei Tarkovsky? Let me know in the comments below how you think Mirror compares to those films and what your favorite film from Andrei Tarkovsky is. Let me know that in the comments below. So I'm going to refer to my notes here because I've taken down some notes of some things that I want to cover in this review, because this film is so deep and so rich that there is just so much going on in this movie, and I just had to capture some of these thoughts. So, you know, this film is very much like a poem. It's poetic in the way that it's composed and the way it's presented. I believe Andrei Tarkovsky's father was a poet, and that was a big part of the inspiration for this film. Watching this movie is really more of an experience than it is going to a movie to try to follow what's going on and follow the plot and what's the main character and what are they trying to do and what's their objectives. This is not the kind of movie for that. This is a movie that is a work of art that is to be appreciated as a motion painting or a poem or a piece of art like that. That's what Mirror is, and I find it to be incredibly fascinating and just one of the most beautiful films that I've ever seen. Another aspect of Tarkovsky's films is the way that he presents his characters. And essentially, he presents characters going through an intense spiritual crisis, and they must give in to the pressure or they have to overcome this crisis. And so that's part of what's going on in this film as well, is that the character, the main character, is a man in 1975 in Russia. He's dying of an unknown illness, and he's sort of going through the recollection of his life and going through the adversity of this illness. And you're seeing the different times of his life that he's facing adversity, you know, whether it's the experiences as a young boy, going through times of war, going through marriage and ultimate failure of his marriage, being a father and the experiences of raising his son. You don't see that in particular detail, but you jump to different times of his life to get an appreciation for some of the things that he experienced at different points of his life, now that he's a man who is getting ready to move on to the next phase. So a couple of things that really influenced Tarkovsky in making this film is, of course, this is a film that's very much about Tarkovsky's childhood. And one of the inspirations of this film for Tarkovsky is his country house. And Tarkovsky's country house in Misno, Russia, I believe that's how it's pronounced, definitely served as a big inspiration for this artist, for Tarkovsky in this film. The country house, of course, in the film, they show a house that is basically a depiction of Tarkovsky's childhood home. And so his country house in Misno is a big part of the influence for this film, as well as the inspiration he got from his father and the things he learned from his father in terms of poetry. And one of the things that his father told him and taught him was, you're not just making films. And that's something to really consider in watching this film Mirror, that this film Mirror it's not just a film, it's really a piece of cinematic art because it combines other areas of art in a film, such as poetry and painting and music, and it blends all those art forms together so beautifully in this cinematic experience, using the medium of cinema to present all of these art forms in a beautiful way as part of a motion picture is really part of the experience of watching Mirror, is really seeing all these art forms come together, essentially experiencing watching a motion painting. And that's really what I took away from this film. It is very much a work of art that I highly, highly appreciated. And I'm so glad that I got to experience this film. So in summary, I absolutely love this film. This is a film that is so different from any film that I've ever seen and really serves as a fantastic piece of art that is really more than just a film. It's more than just a movie. And that's really something to keep in mind if you choose to pick up this title from the Criterion Collection. If you can appreciate a film that presents something a little bit different, that presents something in a different way, that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more non-linear and non-conventional in its structure, and just presents beautiful poetry on the screen in a way that you can appreciate the visions and the memories and the presentations of reality and consciousness and subconsciousness in some incredibly beautiful images and photography. This is a great film to consider. So I definitely recommend it if you are open to artistic films like this. So this is Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, and for me, it comes recommended. Okay, so let's talk about the package from Criterion. Of course, this comes in a beautiful digipack. I absolutely love this digipack edition from Criterion. I mean, this digipack is so wonderful. The only drawback of it is that it can be a little bit difficult to actually unpack it. So if you look on the inside of the package, you've got, of course, a book, a full book, and you've got 2 discs. So you got a 2-disc edition here, beautiful, beautiful image here. On the outside, you see the wooded area and really interesting, photography. If I take out the discs, so you see on this side here, you'll see the burning house, which is a part of this movie. Very interesting. You have this book, which shows the burning house on both sides, contains information on the cast and credits, an outstanding essay from Carmen Gray called All is Immortal, includes Confession and a White Day by Andrei Tarkovsky and Alexander Misharin, which is another essay, and just other images and interesting information about this film. So this is an 87-page book. So that's great. I love that about this release. So great digipack edition from Criterion. This is a fantastic digipack. I love the way that it's packaged. Again, the only thing I don't like is that, and this might be just my copy of it, but it just seems very snug and very hard to actually get the digipack contents out. But once you get those contents out, this edition from Criterion has some awesome supplements that are on these 2 discs. So on the first disc, you have the movie, and you also have a very nice documentary called Andrei Tarkovsky, A Cinema Prayer, which is a 2019 documentary about the director by his son, Andrei Tarkovsky. That is a really, really nice documentary that I highly recommend. It is a beautiful documentary, and it really, really adds to the experience having just watched the film to watch that documentary by his son. So I highly recommend that. Then you also have another one called The Dream in the Mirror, which is a new documentary by Louis Milne and Sean Martin. And then you have a couple of really nice features that feature some of the key players who helped put this film together. And one of those features is from the music composer Eduard Artemyev. So there's an interview on there from him, which is very fascinating. And in this interview, he talks about the process of working with Tarkovsky Tarkovsky needed electronic composer Artemiev to be more of a sound designer than a typical composer, because he wanted to create an atmospheric background for the film. And Tarkovsky told Artemiev that the old masters of art function in cinema as part of a universal continuum of all art forms, and that cinema is a new form of art where these things can come together: music, paintings, poems, etc. So that is a big part of the philosophy of Andrei Tarkovsky. I really thought that feature with composer Artemiev was very interesting. And then you have on here Islands, Georgi Rerberg, which is a 2007 documentary about the cinematographer. That is also a really, really good feature, because Georgi Rerberg was really big in Mosfilm at the time. Mosfilm is Moscow Films, the Russian film company. And he was a big deal at the time. And he talks a lot about the whole process that went into connecting with Andrei Tarkovsky for making this film, and the cinematography of Mirror, which is a big part of this film, is the cinematography. So you'll definitely want to check out that documentary from 2007 with Rerberg. And then of course you've got archival interviews with Tarkovsky and screenwriter Alexander Mishrin. And those interviews are really fascinating, because you really get to learn and appreciate a little bit more about Tarkovsky and his artistic approach to filmmaking, which I think is really important to understand, because it gives you an even greater appreciation for this movie. Because I gotta tell you, if you just watch this film and you don't know anything about Tarkovsky, and you don't know anything about his philosophy, his filmmaking style, his background, or anything, you're gonna walk away with a different impression of this film than you would if you understand the artist, understand the poet, understand what they're going for and what they're trying to communicate through the medium of films. In one of the interviews on here, one of the archival interviews on here with Tarkovsky, he says something that I think sheds a lot of light on his filmmaking approach and really informs the viewer as to whether or not a movie like this is for you or not, and really Tarkovsky's philosophy to making films. And essentially, he said that his films are not intended to please everyone, and that he focused on making films that people look to him for. And he wanted Mirror to be a healing medicine. So that's really something to think about in terms of Tarkovsky's filmmaking approach. He was not trying to make films to please everybody or to appeal to a mass audience, but he was really trying to say something poetic in his films, and it's something that he recognized may not be for everybody. And he wasn't trying to please everybody. He was just trying to reach those with his films who could appreciate what it is that he was going for. So I thought that was interesting of him to say that in one of those interviews. And it really shows you a lot about his philosophy as a filmmaker and as an artist, and ultimately as a poet. I really think watching those interviews, and they're pretty short interviews on there, is really enlightening to give you a little bit more perspective on Tarkovsky, his filmmaking approach, his filmmaking style, his philosophy, and that really helps you to appreciate a film like Mirror. So I highly recommend it. So overall, the supplementary package that Criterion has put together for Mirror is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you get great information not only about Tarkovsky, the director, but you learn about the cinematographer, you learn about the composer, you learn about the editing process that went into Mirror. You learn so many aspects of the philosophy that went into making Mirror and how this film compares to other works of Tarkovsky. So the supplementary package that Criterion has put together for this Digipack edition of Mirror is absolutely fantastic, and I really, really enjoyed going through these supplements. From a video and audio standpoint, I think this movie just hits it right out of the park. I mean, Criterion did a great job with the restoration of this film. You get a 2K digital restoration with an uncompressed monaural soundtrack. Now, I find this interesting because, a lot of Criterion's releases have 4K digital restorations. This is a 2K digital restoration, and I don't really know what the thought process is that goes into 2K versus 4K restorations. I'm not an expert in that space, so let me know in the comments below what you think about that. And if you know anything about that process, definitely put some comments in there that can shed some light on the distinction between those two things. But basically, to my eyes, this film is stunning with this 2K digital restoration. It looks absolutely amazing and fantastic. It's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen that I can think of. And this 2K digital restoration did this film complete justice. You'll see in the supplements, there's some footage of this movie that's presented from archival interviews, and you'll see how the image looks at that time, and you sort of compare mentally to what you saw in this film, and it just blows your mind. I mean, this film is absolutely beautiful with this new restoration, and I think that Mosfilm and Criterion did an amazing job with the restoration and the work on this Blu-ray for this 2K restoration. From a sound standpoint, you have an uncompressed monaural soundtrack, and the music and the voices and the dialogue comes across beautifully. Everything in the soundscape in nature that you're experiencing, whether it's inside the house or outside the house, in the woods and in the nature that Tarkovsky is presenting, which is a big part of this movie, all those sounds come across beautifully in the audio. So from a video and audio standpoint, I think Criterion knocked it out of the park with this release. So great job on that. So overall, I think this is an incredible presentation from Criterion from a video standpoint, an audio standpoint, the supplementary package. The film itself is like watching a dream. And for me, it comes highly, highly recommended if you can appreciate the artistic approach of a film like this. If you need a normal narrative structure or conventional type of a film, then this is not the film for you. But if you're open to a more artistic experience in cinema, I highly recommend Mirror from Andrei Tarkovsky. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on Mirror from Andrei Tarkovsky. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think about this film if you've had a chance to see it? And what do you think about other Andrei Tarkovsky films? And how does Tarkovsky rank for you amongst directors? So who's your favorite director, and where does Andrei Tarkovsky rank for you in your list of directors? Let me know that in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.